Hi, loves. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you. We are on a post Christmas vibe today, Boxing Day. Who knows what you're up to? Hopefully, you are staying really grounded and regulated and doing the things that nourish you and bring you to life. Because really, that is what life and this season is really all about, but it gets distorted a lot of the time. And I wanted to talk today about the concept of saving the best for last. And this came up in a writing class that I took, but it really is a theme that orbits my life on a regular basis because I've had this conditioning for a really long time, even down to the way that I eat my meals. I will literally save all the best parts till the end and get the parts that I don't like over and done with quickly. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. But in a larger sense, especially a relational sense and a life sense, that can mean that we are putting off the thing that would bring us most to life and the thing that we would be most nourishing for a one day, someday, maybe, and potentially it never happens day. There's a lot of people who live for retirement, or when I hit this goal, then I will let myself have X, Y, and Z. When I am healed, I will let myself have the relationship. And when we go about life from this vantage point of saving the best for last, what if the last day doesn't come? What if you never actually get a chance? And I don't say that to freak you out, but I do say that to drop in some very real reality. We can't be living in a collapsed position of cynicism and bah humbugness. But we also can't be living in this Pollyanna, you know, everything is awesome and is always going to work out and there's nothing bad that ever happens. Those two extremes keep you out of right relationship with reality. And the reality is you have right now. Who you are today is going to shape who you become in a month's time, 6 months' time, a year from now. Everything is shaped by the choices that you make moment to moment to moment to moment. So if we have a habit of saving the best for last, guess what? That habit continues to drive your behavior. So even when we get to the promised land of one day, someday, we're still going to be running that habitual pattern. And that's what I want to really presence today is giving yourself a little bit of leeway to play with that, to shift it, to allow yourself to have good things regardless of where you are on the map. This will happen a lot of the time in, a fitness sense. Oh, I will not let myself, go on that vacation or wear that outfit until I look a certain way. And really, that sets you up to not be in a reverent relationship with yourself today. I went through some pretty intense health challenges over these last 5 years. And one of the things that I became most present to was, especially when I had my knee injury, and I had this idea. I'm like, okay, when I turn 40, it's going to be like the best birthday. And like all my friends are going to come. We're going to go do this really cool like trip and, celebrate in a castle and all the things. And then I blew out my knee 2 weeks before my 40th birthday and I couldn't walk on my birthday. And it really like put things into perspective that I had been putting off doing the things that I really wanted to do until this magical 40th birthday day. And then I fucked my knee and I couldn't even do the thing when the time came. And so that's the flip side of this pattern. And then when we look at it in terms of food, because when I look at how I eat as well, so much growing up, this was an adaptation that I developed in response to eating food that I didn't want to eat and not really having the freedom to intuitively go where my body wants to go. Now, as a 43-year-old woman, I do have that freedom. However, this pattern still runs. Even though I'm choosing foods that I really want to eat and that are really good for me to eat, I will still judge the plate and be like, these are the best parts of the meal, and let me push them. I literally push them to the side and won't let myself touch them until I have finished the parts on the plate that I don't love as much. And this really only happens when I'm super unconscious, when I'm really like in a bit of a dip or things are really stressful, and I notice some of these old automated patterns start to show up. And the second I do, when I become conscious and aware of it again, I'm like, okay, hold on. What would happen? Would the world end if I were to eat that piece of steak or that piece of potato before I eat the broccoli? And I can feel the tension in my system, especially when I'm in that state of being in what I call the down. So when we're in the down or we're in the dip, so basically we're just off our center, we're not totally in alignment, we're not in coherence with ourselves, we're not in alignment. And it might be a little misalignment, it might be a big misalignment, but I notice whenever I am misaligned, even the idea of eating the broccoli before the potatoes, it sends me into further dysregulation because it hits this very old pattern, this very old behavior of saving the best for last. And, I think back on this song that I loved in elementary school. I think it was Vanessa Williams, and it was literally called Save the Best for Last. And I could not get enough of that song. It was one of my favorite songs, and I just played it on repeat even as a kid. My neurodivergence was really showing. We just didn't know that that's what that was back then. And I would just put it on repeat, which, if you know much about the subconscious mind and how the mind works, we reprogram ourselves, or we program ourselves through consistency, repetition, and heightened emotion. So music solves for all three, especially if you're putting songs on repeat. So whatever you're listening to on repeat, and me being a little bit more obsessive, when I'm obsessively listening to a song, I am programming myself with that message. The message of that song, save the best for last. And so it's not a surprise that I also adopted that behavior in a lot of areas of my life. And as with all adaptations, they serve us until they don't. So you're never going to hear me making these adaptations wrong. But what I do like to do is presence them so that you can bring them out into the open, and then you can make a powerful choice of whether or not that is still the true thing you want to do. And the way that we change these behavioral patterns is through consistency, repetition, heightened emotion, aka making different choices in the face of the moment where you feel the impulse to do what you normally would do on default. But instead, we bring a little bit more consciousness to it, and we endure the discomfort of breaking the pattern. Not that I'm a huge Joe Dispenza fan, but the idea of breaking the habit of being yourself as being one of the most challenging things that a human being can do, I do resonate with that. And when we get into these ways of being, when we get into these patterns, it can be really hard to break them, which is why we don't. Because it actually is easier in the moment to keep doing what you've always done, except the cost of that is really high. The cost of that is your fulfillment. The cost of that is your enjoyment. The cost of that is your vital aliveness. And we can be a little short-sighted sometimes when we are going through this thing called life. We're like, oh, well, I don't want to endure or feel that discomfort that it would take to break this pattern, even though breaking this pattern would actually expand me into the life that I really want to be living. And so as we go into the lead up into the last year experiment, which if you haven't heard the past 2 episodes, I've touched on it in both of those episodes. It is this experiment that I'm putting myself through for 2026, where I'm living my life as though it's my last year on earth. Because I don't know, maybe it is. Who knows? And if I think about it that way, if I think about, well, if this is my last year on earth, would I really be saving the best for last? Do I want to just save all the good stuff for the last month of 2026? No. No, no, no. When I could take the entire year to be experiencing that enrichment, that fulfillment, those delicious experiences, right? And so what I really want to play with leading into that experiment is giving you these little nuggets as we go through, because we are really going to work on that inside of that container, because I have opened it up. We have people registered. I'm so stoked. And already it's really cool to see the things that are getting declared around what do I want to create for 2026. It's a very creative, forward-moving container. It's if you want to do the deep work of looking into your past and seeing those correlations, I have many options for you there. But that's not what this program is. This program is, we are very much stepping into the current of possibility, and not only stepping into it, but living into it, making choices every single day that are guiding you and putting you on that path where you are going to be experiencing the things that you want to be experiencing. We're going to be doing some cleanup on aisle 5. If we think about the last year of our life, what do we need to acknowledge? What do we need to get complete with, so that we can actually feel that sense of congruence in our system? Because when we are living a life that's out of alignment, that's not going to feel congruent, or, it's just not going to feel good. Let's be honest. It's going to feel a little rough around the edges, if not super rough. And it reminds me of this quote, this spiritual teaching, that you will never find peace in a place that you were never meant to stay. So whether that's a relationship or a job or a city, or a project, if that's not actually coherent for your system, no matter how many mental and emotional and relational gymnastics you play, you are never going to find peace there, because you're not meant to. And the discomfort is a signal that you need to pay attention to. And that ability to read those signals becomes a lot stronger when we are following the current of letting yourself experience pleasure and fulfillment and enrichment today, where you stop saving the best for last. I think about this, especially older generations. I don't know if it's really my generation's thing or the generations after me, but older generations often had like the good china and then the everyday plates, right? And so this philosophy, especially of the last year experiment, is a year of using the china. Like the thing that is in that dining room cabinet that only special occasions, we're going to bust that out. Every day becomes the special occasion, or at least more days become the special occasion. I don't have a china cabinet. It's not really my thing. But I think about that in terms of like jewelry or clothes. I'm like, oh, I'll wear that on the special occasion. What if a random Tuesday was the special occasion and you just dressed up because you can? Because you are living your life for you, because that was the thing that you really wanted to wear, or the way that you move your body. A lot of people go to the gym because that's what they think that they should do. But when you really tune in, is that the true thing for you? Is that the true way your body wants to experience exercise and movement? Or is there something more true? For me, I do like the gym, but not every day. I love variety. I need it. I also need a lot of freedom. These can be challenging values to weave in to a more cohesive life, but I've somehow figured it out. And this, I did a year in review session with my mentor the other day. And so she had us go through the last 10 years, or the last 9 years, because we are ending a 9-year cycle. So we went back in time to 2017 and really looked at the patterns and the sequences that have shown up over the last 9 years. And one of the defining factors of 2017 for me was this declaration of how I was going to formulate my year. So it's so fascinating to me that 2026 is starting and I've done the same thing, just in a different font, just in a different mode, in an upgraded version. Because the middle of 2026, or the middle of 2016, I should say, I went through a really brutal breakup and it rocked my entire foundation and world. And it also propelled me into living on my own for the first time. I'd always had roommates or lived with a partner. And after that relationship ended, I was in my own place. And that has become such a gift because I've learned that I am someone that I can really count on myself for. I needed to learn that lesson because there was a part of me that always thought that I needed to rely on a roommate or a partner, that I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. And so the ending of that relationship, the way that it ended and how it all went down, it propelled me into this new phase of independence and really learning myself in a new expansive way. And then that led me into some deep contemplations about the business that we had built. And even though I was no longer in that business, I could feel really victimized by that. Or I could see the thread underneath, which was, wait, all of those skills that built that business came from me, and like things that I had cultivated, I had learned, I had built into the business. So I could probably do that again just for myself. And that's what I ended up doing. And so 2017, when it came around, I was like, okay, what's the guiding principle here? And I came up with these 4 pillars for myself: fun, friendship, fitness, and fulfillment. If it didn't fit into one of those 4 categories, I was not doing it. Everything I did that year fell into one of those categories. And it was one of the most abundant years of my life because it was driven by such intentionality and clarity and certainty. I literally put my my stake in the sand and said, this is how it's going to go. This is what I'm committed to. This is what I'm doing. And it was the first year where I consciously really wove in this idea of like, well, what if I stop saving the best for last? What if like the thing that I want to do is going to really move the needle forward, and also it's going to fuck up that pattern of saving the best for last, but that's okay. And the reason why I think it's coming back this year and going into 2026 is because we do have a new energetic cycle starting. We just went through the year of the snake, a lot of shedding, a lot of letting go, a lot of endings. And so whenever that happens, we get to sit at this new precipice and look at the canvas, look at the horizon and say, okay, great. What is it that I want to create into life? How do I want to create myself alive? How do I want to live this life of mine, especially if I know that it's ending? And I know we don't want to think about that. A lot of people have challenges with death and endings. We don't want to feel disappointment. We don't want to feel endings. Like, it can be a really challenging thing for a lot of people. And yet, in terms of coming into right relationship with reality, you have to touch that. You have to be willing to say, yep, this all ends. And if this were to end today, and I saved the best for last, which is some day in the future, that's what I'm going to live my last day as? No, not the vibe. And then we get, the side of the camp where they're like, well, if there's no like rules, then people are just going to go awry and they're going to not take care of themselves and they're just going to eat ding dongs and ho-hos all day. Well, maybe. But if we're really tuned in to what makes you come vitally alive, I guarantee you will not be eating the ding dongs and ho-hos and just watching mindless TV, because that is actually not going to make you come alive. You will feel the effects of that. And this is the cool thing about doing an experiment, is you get to know your internal infrastructure. You get to know your internal terrain. You get to experiment with these things. Because sometimes maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe you do need a day where you just go and get McDonald's and you have it for that, 5-year-old who never got to have McDonald's. I think about that movie about a boy in the early 2000s, and he meets like Hugh Grant, and Hugh Grant, doesn't have a fucking clue. But his mom is like this super crunchy granola woman who is anti everything and has never allowed this kid to have fast food. And so naturally, when he starts hanging out with Hugh Grant, he gets to go shopping and get the types of, trainers and shoes and clothes that he's always wanted, but his mom has never let him have because, hand-me-downs and, thrifted clothes. And then he also lets him have fast food. And sometimes you need to do that, but that's not a sustainable way of living life. And when we start to really tap into letting ourselves be fully fed, and I've got a program coming on this in the spring, and I'm so stoked. But we're not going to start it until the actual spring, new year, because it is a more cyclical program. We're going to be working with the seasons, and that is a very important energetic. especially if we want to feel really vitally alive. And when we let ourselves go through these seasons and honor what we actually need and go right to the core of it, like what is the thing that you actually need here? And you let yourself have it, the impulse to get that need met in a more shadowy way starts to decline, because your system is always going to try and get the need met, whether you're in approval of it or not. So I know I'm going to go on a huge tangent here, but this also shows up in terms of our sexual appetite and our sexual hunger. If we are not in approval of that hunger, of that desire, we will find ways, your system will find ways to get those needs met, and they're probably not going to be super relational. It's probably going to have a lot of blowback for you, whether that comes with a lot of shame or you have to like start working with the patterns of hiding and manipulation and lying and cheating. Like these are all things that are going to come up when we are not in right relationship with the true desire. And when we really boil down saving the best for last, like there is a piece of that. There is a piece of that pattern that is not in full approval of the desire for the thing, which is why we have to, in this weird kind of masochistic way, punish ourselves, delay the gratification. And listen, there is a lot of merit in being able to have some self-control, but also that gets taken too far a lot of the time in this world, where we are delaying the experience of the enjoyment of the enrichment because we want to be a quote unquote good person. But there is a difference between actually being a good person and performing the good person identity. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, especially in my teaching containers, because it is one of the first things that I like to dismantle is the identity of being a good person, so that you can actually be a good person, because the identity actually stops you from being a good person. If you need to be seen as a good person, again, you will slip into patterns that any time that that identity is threatened, then the shadow behavior comes out to try and protect your image. Versus when you are just truly a good person, you know in your heart of hearts that you are a good person. It changes the game. Because what happens if someone comes to me and they're like, Kelsey, you're a horrible, horrible woman. If I'm truly a good person, I'd be like, okay, cute story, but like that's just not true. It's not going to whack me. It's not going to hook me. But we get hooked when our identities are running the show, because the identity needs to be seen a certain way to be considered valuable or lovable. And when we do that deconstruction work and we really get into the heart of it, of like, okay, I adapted these identities, these adaptive strategies and patterns of behavior, and all of that was kind of keeping me from the truth of who I am. And I'll be honest, the truth of who I am is primarily a good person. But there are parts of me that are shadowy. There are parts of me that are really vicious and bitchy and mean and cruel. And the reason why those parts don't destroy my life is because I acknowledge that they are there. I have approval for them. And I understand why they may flare up, and I have consciousness around it, and I just do not let them run amok. But it doesn't mean that I deny that they're there. If someone came to me and they were like, Kelsey, you were such a bitch to me, I would sit with that and be like, is there some truth in that? Because sometimes there is. And there's so much power in being able to admit, you know what, I can see the truth in what you're saying. There is a part of me that is absolutely a bitch, and she definitely came out when I said XYZ. You're right. It's such a powerful relational move, very, very unconventional. Most people in relationship are just fighting to protect their identity and their image. They're not interested in true connection. They're not interested in true intimacy, because true connection and true intimacy requires truth. It requires honesty. It requires us to be able to pull the curtain back and be like, yep, these are all the parts of me. They all belong, and I will be responsible and accountable for when those shadowy parts come out. And that becomes so much easier to do when you are letting yourself be fully fed day to day to day to day. And I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about the fullness of your life. Like how you feed yourself is a big part, but also how you move your body, big part. How much you prioritize an environment that you thrive in. So that can be your house, that can be your work environment, that can be your relational world. Like when we are saving the best for last, we are depriving ourselves from vital nutrients in the present. That if we were to let ourselves have, it allows you to go through life with more capacity, with more attunement, more embodiment. That's really the name of the game here, is to have a lot more capacity to meet life fully. Maybe we'll do a separate episode on this, but there's a lot of talk these days about nervous system regulation and the large misunderstanding that that means being calm all the time. Regulated does not mean calm. Regulated means your nervous system is responsive and you're able to come back into a place of consciousness, stay in your body, stay with the sensations of your body without spilling them onto other people. And when we are able to have the proper response in a situation, that is a signal of a healthy nervous system. An unhealthy nervous system, let's say you're in a situation where a violation has happened. The proper nervous system response to a violation is anger and disgust. But if we are not in a healthy nervous system state and we think that we need to be calm and loving, all you're doing is abandoning yourself. All you're doing is rejecting the experience that you are having in order to make somebody else more comfortable. Somebody else who violated you in some way, shape, or form. That's not a vibe. But again, these are patterns and ways of being that stack on the choices that we make in a day-to-day to day-to-day basis. So if I'm living my life in a way that honors what it is that I need to feel fully nourished and fully alive, and instead of waiting for that one day, someday, day in the future where I can use the good china or, eat the potato before the broccoli or wear the outfit and razzle dazzle people on a Tuesday. If I'm not waiting for that one day, someday, I'm really attuned in my body. I'm listening to what it is that my system needs and wants from me. And when I'm listening, it allows me to stack that habit as well. And if I build more momentum in this direction, it actually allows me to be more responsive and responsible, which really responsibility is just your ability to respond in a moment. Your ability to respond from a place of truth and honesty. So when someone says something or does something that hurts you, you can say, ouch, that really hurt. Instead of stuffing it down and pretending that's not what happened. And then you create this whole falsehood inside of your relational dynamics, which that's going to fall apart. And when we think about saving the best for last relationally, that can show up in a couple different ways, but the way that we'll kind of dive into today is the offshoot of like, I'll take what I can get. Like, that is not a vibe. I'm sorry. But if you are on this unconventional path of love and relationships, settling for good enough is never going to get you the fulfillment that you're looking for. It's going to have you set up that relationship to be riddled with resentment. And, the whole shame, blame, make wrong judgment, those four energies are going to be the foundation of a relationship that's misaligned. So when we take what we can get, or we settle for the person who's good on paper, but when we're around them, we don't feel vitally alive. Or we're with the person who, we like, but again, that passion, that aliveness isn't there. And we think, oh, well, those are just fantasies. Like, that's not what real love is all about. And I think that is one of the biggest lies that exists in the overall relational culture right now, is this idea that for it to be a real, true relationship, we can't be prioritizing passion and chemistry. Passion and chemistry can't be the only thing that you're building your relational choices off of. But if it's missing, if it is not there, or it's at like 10% and that's as high as it goes, that's not the vibe either, because that is a safe relationship. That is a relationship that is never going to cause you to grow, shift, change, and become the person that you are here to be. Our relationships are the places where our unfinished business comes out for resolution. And no matter how much work you've done, no matter how healed you are, your shit comes up in relationships. You can't outrun it. There's no amount of work you could do single that is going to prevent that from happening in a relationship. And then people get really fucked up when I say that, because they're like, well, why the fuck am I doing this work? Good question. Why are you? It's a really good question. You should ask yourself that a lot. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it in order to guarantee yourself an outcome? Are you doing it to try and prevent any discomfort or pain from happening in the future? Because if that's the reason why you're doing it, you're not doing it because it's true. And we know that we're doing it when it's true if we're doing it because, well, I want to have the skills and the awareness to be able to navigate what comes up in my relationships when it comes up, so that I can bring my best self forward and I can be responsible for the parts that are wounded, that are going to cause some interference, that are going to cause some mischief, and that I can really show up and consciously create my relational dynamics, whether those are friendships, whether those are romantic partnerships, lovers, creative partners, like work partnerships, like everything in life is a relationship. And so having the skills to be able to create those masterfully and create them in a way where there is actually a heartbeat to the relationship. There's a pulse, there's passion, there's aliveness, there's a vitality to the relationship itself. That takes something. But you're never going to get there if we're doing the work just to prevent pain. You're never going to be able to prevent pain. Pain is a part of life on this planet. And we do this work so that you're equipped to navigate the pain. So you have nervous system stability to be able to hold disappointment, to be able to pivot when you need to pivot, to be able to change when you need to change, when you need to grieve what is there to be grieved. That's why we do the work. And when we are really wanting to set ourselves up to win, which obviously with the last year experiment, I'm really intent on you winning in your next year. And like, what would life look like if every day you let yourself dive into the thing that you're like, no, I need to save that for a special occasion? What if you just wore the lingerie on a Monday because it makes you feel good? Or what if you quit that gym that you fucking hate and you go take a dance class and shake your ass 5 days a week? And like, that's the thing you're going to stick to. That's the thing that's going to get you moving, and you're going to stay committed and learn yourself to be someone who is committed and can follow through. You know, what if you actually let yourself cook meals that you really want to eat, and like the foods that you really want to eat? Like, I'm a bougie girl when it comes to food. That is the one area that I will always spend a good amount of money on. Like, I'm shopping at farmers markets, I'm shopping at Whole Foods, I'm shopping at health food stores. Like, I'm very, very intentional with the food that I eat and how it gets prepared. And part of that is like, there is a desire to have a cooking show. I've always had this desire. I think it was my obsession with the Food Network growing up. And I loved food shows and learning and cooking. And I love cooking for people. It's one of my love languages, is having a long table dinner. I have a very long dining room table in my apartment. I probably could free up a lot of space in my apartment if I just got rid of that, but I can't, because it's a fundamental part of what brings me to life, is preparing food for people that I love. And I'm not married and I don't have kids. So the way that this works is I build communities in which I am able to do these types of dinners and experiences. I built a supper club when I first moved to Vancouver in 2009. And listen, I'm a weirdo. And so I was like, what if I made a supper club, but not just like any supper club, but a supper club where we kind of play this little game around, I forget what TV, like food show it was, but the premise of my supper club was every month we would get together and it would be centered around a certain theme. So we would pick an item that was local, in season, and the entire menu needed to be built around that ingredient. So the first one I think we did was maybe apples. It was apples or pumpkin, I can't remember. And there were 3 teams. Team 1 was the team that sourced all the food. So they had to go and source it locally. Local farms, local merchants, and local produce. Like, we were very intentional about that. Team number 2 was the cooking team. They had to come up with the menu, and they obviously provided the ingredients list to the shopping team. And they cooked everything. And then team 3 was the entertainment team. And they had to come up with games and experiences that centered around that theme, so that ingredient. So there was so much creativity that happened in this supper club. It was so fun. I honestly don't even know how people found out about it, but every time there was at least 30 people at these supper clubs. And we had to start capping it, because so many people wanted to come, but like there was only so much space and obviously a limited budget when I think everyone was paying maybe $5 or $10. And so to get all the food and to create but it was the funnest thing. And when you start tapping into what makes you come alive, you will find yourself following these types of threads where, if you're a bougie food eater like me, you'll find ways not only to create that into your life, and that's where you prioritize your investments, but also find ways to make sure that those fundamental needs are met. Because community connection over food is really important to me. I'm so shocked that I didn't open a restaurant. Maybe that's coming in my lifetime. Who knows? But I really do thrive when that becomes a solid point in my life. And over COVID, this was the case too. Like I combined my love for food and community and creativity and creation by having these dinners at my house where I would cook for everyone. And generosity is a really big thing for me. It's one of my core values. And so we started a different version of a supper club where we have this little coven. And each month, someone in the coven was responsible for doing a dinner. And the way that we rolled it was that the person who was hosting took care of everything so that everyone who came could just receive. But it was balanced in the sense that it was in a rotation. So it wasn't just falling onto one person all the time to, pay for everything and cook everything, clean everything up. But it was this really cool experience. And that went on for a couple years until, a lot of the women dispersed and are living in different places now. But there are these ways that when you start following the thread of what feeds you and what brings you to life, you are going to open new doors of possibility for yourself. And that is really what the last year experiment is all about. Where you are eating off the good china, you are wearing the lingerie, you are, listening to the records versus doing your, Spotify playlist. You have your house set up the way that you really want it so that it feels good. You're living where you want to live. You're in the relationships that you actually want to be in. You're creating those very intentionally. You're writing the book. You're taking the dance class. You're traveling to where you've always wanted to go. You're allowing yourself to follow that thread and break that pattern of saving the best for last. And what we're doing is prioritizing the best for now. What is the best? What is in the best and highest good today? What is going to make you come alive today? That's the vibe. That's where we're headed. So if you want to join me on this experiment, I'll put all of the details in the show notes. Go sign yourself up. It's $88 a month, and you get my writing class, you get my movement class, and we will do a live call together every month where we check in, we share wins, we really keep a pulse on that momentum, and you get to make those declarations of this is what I'm committed to. This is what I'm creating this next month ahead, and having that accountability, but also people who are playing at the same level and who will hold you capable to creating and designing a life that at the end of 2026, you're like, fuck, that was fucking good and I'm ready to do it again. Okay? I love you all. I hope you've had a beautiful Christmas holiday, and I will be back next week for another episode, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye, friends.